Good morning and welcome to One Lonely Farmer, where everything is perfect all the time. Anyway, I am on my way to go get a load of hay off of a farm that needs to have that hay cleared off of it. Alright, so now I got my microphone hooked up. Now there's a couple of ways you can run this tractor, and I like running it different than anybody else does. So in order to keep everything lubricated the way it's supposed to be lubricated while doing loader work, you have to put it in the loader configuration, right? So basically the loader work configuration is that the throttle is set at about halfway. You could run it wide open if you want to, but I don't. But you set it so that the throttle's halfway, okay? And from there, your foot pedal then controls the speed of the transmission instead of the stick over here on the console, and I can show you that in a second. I'll actually demonstrate that before I go ahead and... So I'm using the foot pedal. That's actually not changing the throttle at all. All that thing is doing is changing the speed of the transmission. I have not taken my foot off of that pedal. When you slow it all the way down, you slow it all the way down, right? So you can very easily, very easily just set everything down where it belongs. I haven't touched the clutch. I haven't touched the brake. I move in there very slowly to the, hopefully this thing is working. Very slowly to the work that I'm doing, and then I just throw it into neutral and then into reverse after I get it set down the way it's supposed to be set down. And that's how I'm going to do it here. So everything works very good. Now if I was doing that the way my father and Tim and even Grant, I don't know if Grant runs it any different. He probably doesn't even know that there's multiple functions to this transmission. So if I run it the way they run it, you would hear that engine speeding up, slowing down, and doing, you know, what the old type of tractor like the 7410 would do. That had a pedal as well, and you would just, you know, have forward and reverse. You'd have to use the clutch a lot. They were very different. Those were power quad, whereas this is the auto power if you're in Europe, England, UK, whatever you want to call it, and Ireland if you want to go that way, or the IVT, infinitely variable transmission. So I'm going to pick up the camera. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. You can see my foot is on the pedal, and I have my left-hand reverser here. So the engine's running at half throttle. I'm not touching this stick, but I use that foot pedal, and that speeds up and slows down the transmission. Kind of sort of like what the old backhoes and loaders do. So before you get out on the road, you need to go into your... See, I'm not touching anything else. I'm slowing down, putting it into reverse. Now I'm going to back up, and my pickup hitch here, or my fast hitch. I know there's a lot of guys that Agri-Speed hitch is what this thing is called. It is a game changer. Watch this, boom. And that's it. That's all, folks. We're hooked up and ready to go. So now to go to the computer screen, you switch that to park. That will highlight the foot pedal option right there. You see that? Hit the check mark. You hear my engine slow down? I'm in full auto, I'm in half throttle, and now everything can run off of the foot pedal. So I can just do that, and then it'll, in conjunction with the foot pedal and the throttle, it will control the transmission and the throttle as well. And as you can see, I never got out of the tractor, and there it is trailing behind me. There is, to my right, a project that needs to be done today. You can see that's the 4960 with a hay rake on behind it. because I have a flat tire in the 4450 and I have a broken hay rake there. we have the parts to fix that hay rake. It's just going to take the time to do it. And Timothy's hauling a load of hay today, and I am waiting for Grant to show up at the farm there before we can come on down. And I want to get a load of hay out of here. Now you got to be very careful when you do this. So let's flip you on around. Flip you on around. There's a barn there, right? So you got to be careful. Oh shit. And coming up the road is a garbage truck. We don't want a garbage truck. So we'll let the garbage truck pass. As here he comes. We'll be out of his way, or he'll be out of my way, and then I will go ahead and get back out on the road. Because passing that guy with a load of hay, it's not impossible, but these roads are reminiscent of a time long past, like let's see, what would you call that? The time of the English settlement here. And I'm gonna put my four-wheel drive out of automatic to brake, so that my front wheels, it kicks into four-wheel drive when you put your foot on the brake, and this tractor has front brakes. So I should be able to clear that off of here today without any issues. I know my dad is probably going to come down and grab a load or so, and we'll just do what we have to do. That's all. Oh, there's a tree. Boom. And do what we have to do. Anyway, so that's how we grab hay. I will show you the reverse process when I get to the farm, which is only going to take me a minute. All right, we're going to try something a little bit different. I've already disconnected the wagon from the tractor. It's just a cable you pull that will just drop that tongue off. And the nice thing is I have this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful microphone that seems to be able to pick up a lot from a fair distance. I've already done this. So you're going to get a a live, I wouldn't say live, but a live commentary as we go. So as I'm unloading this, I'm going to talk about a couple of things, and you can just sit there and watch and listen to my little monologue here. So monologue. All right. So I have been contacted to do basically a podcast. Oh, let me get her in four-wheel drive here. Front wheel assist, I guess you want to call it. A podcast with Bill Spada. Spada? I think they call it Bill Spada. So Bill Spada is running for governor of this great state of New Jersey. I do believe that, yeah. Going to be running for governor, has announced he's running for governor, is running for governor. Anyway, so I've been approached to do this podcast, and, you know, over the course of my lifetime in agriculture, I have seen many different things come and go, and, you know, people jump into something, realize that it's not what they thought it was, and then leave it, and then come back later. I am not that type of person. I like to do things consistently. You know, I'm like the turtle and the tortoise and the hare, you know, that race, the story about the tortoise and the hare. Well, the story of the tortoise and the hare is slow and steady will win the race. I don't think slow and steady wins the race. I think it's consistency and perseverance, but that's just me. But anyways, I've been asked if this thing comes to fruition, and I will be on the radio with 101.5, which I'm more than willing and happy to do. I can curb my language for that. You know, maybe they'll see who I am and be like, nah, I don't think we want that guy. But I am a voice for agriculture. I really am. And I'm going to talk about the first thing that I realized that the government was against farmers. The first experience I had that I realized that the United States government, or the state government, is against farmers making I wouldn't say a living, but just making any, you know what, I got to get this guy here, making any sort of progress in advancing at any rapid rate, like making money. Farmers just want to live their lives. We are probably one of the freest people in the country yet, but and maybe that's why the government's onto us. They want to control every aspect of everything. This country is not what it was founded on. Common law is not in practice anymore. It is no longer common law. Common law was set up by Christians at the beginning of our country, but we're not going to get into a religious debate, because I'm just not going to get into a religious debate. But anyway, the first thing that I did was in about 1989. This was general awareness of how crooked this politicians and this country is, and how farmers are low man on the totem pole kind of people, because we do actually have more power than anyone in this country. We are the food supply. Most people don't want to have to deal with animals, raising their own food or anything, and that's worldwide. So farmers in general, if I needed to, if we had to live off grid, we could do it. Honest to God, we could do it. I can raise cows, pigs, shoot deer. I don't care what it is. I can eat it. I know how to fish. I know how to hunt. I know how to raise food. I know how to raise grain, hay for animals, milk, whatever. You name it, we can do it. But the majority of folks don't know how or have the capability to do so. And of course, that's fine by me. But back in about 1989, and I'm going to say it was 89 or 90, I was involved with my dad and my grandmother in the dairy business to an extent. I had no dog in the show, or pony in the show, as they would say, or no skin in the game. Maybe that's another terminology for it. But this deal, we went to a meeting. It was a meeting for dairy farmers, in which we were, and there was a lot of folks there that had applied for and had gotten the award of Dairy of Distinction. And my father made a comment. He didn't call it the Dairy of Distinction. He called it the Dairy of Extinction Award. And he offended a few people, but he was right. In the end, my father was right. And my hat is off to him. I think that between him and my grandmother, they were very, very smart in the predictions of this Dairy of Distinction and the Farmland Preservation Program for dairy farmers. So farmland preservation, if you don't know, is the state buys your right to build on your farm. They offset you or compensate you for the building rights of that farm, and it's a one-time payout. You get paid once, and that's the end of it. You can no longer subdivide it and build it into houses in the state of New Jersey. There is preservation in Pennsylvania as well, but that's just Pennsylvania. So anyways, we had about 9 tables of guys and gals, and this politician, I'm sure he was a politician. I mean, we're talking 30 some odd years ago. And this politician, or this member of the United States Department of Agriculture, which is more than likely what he was, said, "Hey guys, how about we do a think tank sort of a situation here where you all sit around and discuss what it would take to make New Jersey dairymen, profitable and, want it to be a generational dairy farm, because we're losing dairy farms it was a very alarming rate. I think at that time there was still 200 dairies in the state. I don't think we have 20 left in New Jersey. Honest to God. There's a few, but I don't think there's 20. There may be, and I could be wrong, and I'll admit when I'm wrong if I'm wrong. But here's the deal. We sat around, and there was a lot of talk and discussion between these around the 9 tables of farmers on, I'm gonna drop it. Oh, I didn't drop it, son of a bitch. Anyway, among these 9 tables, and I'm pretty sure it was my dad and my grandmother there was a lot of discussions at milking time on what it would take and what this meeting was about, but what it would take to make dairy farming sustainable in the state of the highest taxes in the nation, and at that time, a very ambitious group of contractors that were looking to buy up land from older folks that had kids that didn't want to farm because there was no money left in it. And my dad and my grandmother pretty much came up with this before they went, and I had no knowledge of it. But my dad said, look, I think that if you want to continue to have dairy farms in the state, you really need to compensate dairy farmers. You just need to compensate dairymen. And in order to compensate dairymen in a manner in which their kids will want to stay farming, how about you put a 2-cent incentive for dairy farmers on every container of milk sold, not every gallon, but every container. And another group, they said, well, how about milk vending machines, which actually did gain some traction later on, and there were some milk vending machines, but to be quite honest with you, nobody bought milk, because who wants to spend, $1 when a can on 12 ounces of milk, when the equivalent of soda was like 45 cents, literally 45 cents for a can of soda at that time. I even saw a treat was 35 cents at that time. So with that being said, everybody was in agreement that was a pretty good idea. So let's present it let's present it and see if these dudes are, these politicians are willing to actually, my thing got bent, I think, are willing to maybe entertain this thing. And it was great, everybody's like, oh, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. And the farmers through the Farm Bureau and all those guys, because they're supposed to be farmers. I don't think they are anymore, but they're supposed to be farmers that run that thing. Anyway, the politician, or the head of the United States Department of Agriculture, State Department of Agriculture at the time, he's like, yeah, that's a great idea and everything, but dairy farmers will be rich. And that's exactly what they said. He said it in front of all of us. Dairy farmers will be rich. Well, a bit of a jeer came up through the crowd, and a mumbling came up in the crowd, and one guy shouted, what the hell is wrong with that? Right? Everybody else is getting rich. Why can't we? And that was the end of it. And it's as plain as the nose on my face, and as shocking as that was. I'm 52 years old now. Back then I wasn't even able to drive. I started driving in October of '89. So this was, I did not have a driver's license. I know I didn't. October of '89, I started driving. This was in like August or September of that year. It had to be, because we were driving a 1988 Chevy pickup truck, which was new in '88. We were milking 88 cows in 1988. It was '88 and '88. And at that time, we were making enough money to survive, pay the taxes, buy some equipment here and there. Nothing too obscure. But anyway, with that being said, what's wrong with making dairy farmers rich? And this discussion went around and said, well, you'll have more dairymen flooding into this state than anywhere else in the country, and this state can't handle that. And, of course, then it comes up and says, well, it would only be for existing dairy farmers, not new dairy farmers. And they're like, well, how are you going to do that? It's like, well, you're the legislators, you tell us. We just came up with this idea, and I think it would have worked wonderfully. I still believe that there would still be 200 dairy farms in this state if every container of milk that got sold in this state had a 2-cent incentive on it for dairy farmers. It would be a different landscape on a lot of this ground. There would probably be, I would probably be doing custom chopping and things like that, like my grandfathers, both of them did back in the day. So you look at this, you look at the way things have gone, and we're going to pass, several dairy farms that are no longer on the way to where we're going, and I'm probably not even going to talk that long, but I do have to say it just never gained any traction at all, because later in life I realized why they would never do such a thing. Not at the moment, why not, but why would they ever, and I mean why would they ever want to make dairy farmers or any farmers rich for that matter? So any farmer that's rich today from farming is because they bought land, say 20, 30 years ago, up along, say, Route 78, and now they're selling it for warehousing it, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 an acre for warehousing or whatever it is that they're getting, which is really what they're doing. I mean, millions and millions of dollars are going into these old farmers' hands, because not because they're farming, it's because they're selling the land off to build warehousing. And of course there is a need for that, in today's society. But wouldn't you much rather look out across the field? Not that field, because that particular variety of soybeans is susceptible to dying off when it gets stung by aphids and never recovering, which is disgusting to me, but it is what happened there. And I got 200 acres of that shit. And if you don't believe me, when I get up here, I did a replant, and you can see the line where they know how to recover. But anyways, that's not part of the subject here. So making farmers rich is not, this is a dairy farm right here. The farm to the right was a dairy farm. This on the other side, that was a dairy farm. When we get to the end of this, way in the back, you can see the tops of the silos. That was a pretty good sized dairy farm. They were milking over 100 cows in the 80s. Yeah, this up here is a horse farm now. The roof is blown off of it. You can see that. That's pretty bad. There's no money in horses either, by the way. That ship sailed. At least these horses. But up here, there was a dairy farm here. That barn got taken down back in the 80s. They took it down, or the 90s they took it down. But anyway, they don't want farmers rich because farmers won't sell land. Farmers will buy land, and then developers can't buy it to develop it. So if you give a farmer 2 cents on every container, doesn't matter where the milk comes from, whether it's Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, or Delaware, if you gave that 2-cent incentive to stay dairy farming, the landscape of this township and this county and the state of New Jersey would look very, very different. Open fields are targets for developers because they do not have to clear it. And that's why you see these big developments on big land all down through the dairy end of the state of New Jersey, which was South Jersey. There was a lot more dairy down there. And you're not going to have dairy ever come back because there's no place for it. They built it up into old folks' retirement homes. And yeah, so that's what happened there. And so that's why they don't want dairymen to be wealthy or farmers to be wealthy, because no land will ever come up for sale. And if it did, it would come up for sale. But if it did come up for sale, another farmer would buy it, and because they would have the money to purchase it. And then you wouldn't have housing developments and warehousing and all this other nonsense. We have lost land to warehousing. It's a shame, but it happens, and that's just the way it goes. But anyway, that's my deal for the day. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and yeah. Hopefully I get to talk to Bill Spada. I think it's Spada. Anyway, there's signs up here for him. I'd like to talk on New Jersey 101.5 and on his podcast, just in why the farmers are leaving and why we are the whipping boys of the federal government and state and local governments as well. Condemnation of land is illegal according to our Constitution, but nobody stands up for the farmer because we just don't have the money to fight for ourselves. We just don't have the money for it. Our money is all tied up in land and materials like tractors that are now out of reach to purchase. So, whatever. See ya.